You need winners? Let the Football Insiders show you how to make money. General Manager Al DeMarco, a former sports reporter and contributor on Fox Sports, MSNBC, and Comcast Sports TV, brings over 25 years of handicapping experience to the table. CEO Steve Budin, the author of Bets, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, is the man responsible for creating the sports betting industry. Together, they are the Football Insiders, your number one source for football winners.
Favorites went 9-6-1 against the spread in week number 2 as they bounced back from a miserable week 1 performance. The home teams went 10-5-1 in Vegas. Even the lone double-digit favorite managed to get the cover, although it took a miracle and 2 Blaine Gabbert fourth-quarter interceptions for the Carolina Panthers to get the cover against the 49ers. And here we are, week number 3. We've got 8 great games to break down. This is the Football Insiders. I'm Al DeMarco, and joining me once more, Steve Budin. And Steve, we've got a great game to start it all off. Finally, the Broncos leaving the Mile High City, hitting the road to take on the Cincinnati Bengals. A Bengals team very fortunate to be 1-1, needed a last-minute field goal to escape with a win against the Jets on the road last week in the rain, the muddy conditions. They came up short against the Pittsburgh Steelers. This game, I'm going to throw it to you first. You, a lifelong Jets fan, you were very disappointed that the Bengals beat the Jets in week number 1. Week number 2, as I said, the Bengals coming up short against Pittsburgh. Does Cincinnati manage to rebound in their home opener in this spot, laying a field goal against Denver?
Well, lifelong Jet fan or lifetime Jet hater, let's get into that subject on another show. Al, if there was a theme song for this Denver Bronco defense, to me, it would be Riding Dirty. Because let me tell you something, these guys are willing to do whatever it takes on defense to win, and you can call it dirty, Al, but I call it old school. And look, if anyone was wondering whether Peyton Manning was responsible for last year's Super Bowl run, I think this Denver defense has thoroughly answered that question, and the answer is hell no. I mean, how good is this Denver defense? 2 defensive scores in the fourth quarter to win the last game, and you know what? Their offense, Al, it's not so shabby either. It's much more balanced than it's been over the years. And with all the mediocre parity in the league, I mean, this team could find themselves right back in contention for title number 2. You think I love this Denver team? You're absolutely right. Cincinnati, I mean, come on, be honest, Al. They're not in the same class. They're not the same caliber of team. They're like the B version of the Denver Broncos. I say it all the time. Men lie, women lie. The numbers usually don't lie. Denver 4-0-1 against the spread last 5 games overall, while Cincinnati 1-3-1 against the spread the last 5 home games. I'm going to take Denver here, the dirty dog, on the road.
Well, the numbers may not lie, but the numbers can always be twisted. And I've always maintained in 20 years in this business, you give me a stat that supports one side, I can find you 7 to support the other. Bengals 13-6 ATS roll as a home chalk. Here's the problem with the Bengals. They have been unable to run the ball. Second worst team through 2 games in terms of running the ball on the ground, only 103 total yards, 2.8 yards per carry. They've got to be able to run the ball. You can't have Andy Dalton throwing the ball 50-plus times as he did against the Steelers. That's not how the Bengals are going to be able to win. But in terms of the Broncos, they had a comfortable season opening schedule, especially breaking in a brand new quarterback. They had a Carolina team that was up 17-10 starting the fourth quarter in Denver before the Panthers self-destructed. And we saw the Panthers last week. They played loose with that ball. 4 more turnovers in the game against San Francisco at home. They turned the ball over and cost them the game in week number 1. Last week against Indianapolis, the Colts team that, listen, they lost at home in week number 1 against Detroit, and we saw how bad the Lions were. This is going to be the first quality opponent, I feel, that Denver has played, and I feel it's a must-win for Cincinnati. Is it a game I would personally play? No, but I do think Cincinnati is worth the 3-point investment at home. I would certainly buy down the half point for insurance purposes, and that's something we're going to touch on a little later in the show, the value of buying down the half point. But if I had to play it, you put a gun to my head, I would go ahead and take Cincinnati in this spot, and I would force Denver to prove to me whether or not they can deliver on the road. Next game, I think, is a far more interesting game from a betting perspective, Steve. Arizona at Buffalo. This is a game I know that we both both. Loved the Cardinals last week when they were hosting Tampa Bay. The real Arizona Cardinals showed up after a no-show against New England in week number 1. They absolutely destroyed Tampa Bay. Rex Ryan is a fraud. I've always believed Rexy is a fraud, and pretty soon they're going to run Rexy out on the rails in Buffalo after that 0-2 start. I love last week. The Bills deliver on offense. They get run out of town at home by your Jets, and what do they do after the game? They fire the offensive coordinator. Makes sense. Defense can't stop anybody, so after the game you fire the OC. Perfect sense for the Bills and Rex Ryan.
Al, I got to be honest, I freaking love this game so much that it has to be a trap. It has to be. I mean, Buffalo's about to go 0-3, like you said, while Rex and Rob completely destroy yet another organization on their way to the unemployment line very soon. Trust me on that one. They lost, like you said, to the Jets in Buffalo, which remind everyone, that's Rex Ryan's de facto Super Bowl every year. And believe me when I tell you, Al, the Jets, just like you said, complete and utter fraud and phony. Like you said, they fired their offensive coordinator in last week's debacle like it's his fault. And all I can say to the Buffalo fans is thank God Rex doesn't have another loser brother who needs a temporary job. Look, Al, Zona, they came up big last week. We both said they would, and they did. They had the slow start in the preseason, the eye-opener in week 1, and then the Cardinals came roaring back last week, just like we said they would, and beat the living daylights out of Tampa Bay 40-7 in Phoenix. So why wouldn't they roll here? You know very well, one of the cardinal rules in gambling, and I say cardinal, no pun intended, is sometimes, Al, you can't be scared to bet the obvious. Obviously, the Cardinals are the better team here. They're heads and tails above the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to lay the wood here with Zona. I'm not worried about the trap.
And in case you forgot, since it was a Thursday night game 2 weeks ago, how bad was the Bills' defense in that particular game against the Jets? They gave up 493 yards, 28 first downs. And again, after the game, instead of firing his brother as defensive coordinator, they fired Greg Roman as offensive coordinator, even though they owe him $2.1 million each of the past 2 years or next 2 years on his contract, highest paid offensive coordinator in football, and they gave him the axe. It makes no sense. By the way, Bills 3-8-1 against the spread, their last 12 outside of the AFC East. Cardinals on a 22-9-1 point spread run outside of division play. Next game, Giants -4.5 at home against Washington. This has been a series the Giants have absolutely dominated. You know, Washington, we said last week on the show, must-win situation for Jay Gruden at home against Dallas. Well, must-win turned into another miserable loss. Redskins 0-2 start. Both at home, both times the defense unable to get a stop in a key situation. The Redskins unable to run the ball with success. And Kirk Cousins certainly has not validated that big one-year contract that he signed.
Look, the question here isn't whether or not the Giants are better than the Redskins. We all know that they are. The question for me is, are they better enough to avoid a backdoor cover by a Redskins team that is now, they go from a must-win to a do-or-die situation in what's only week 3 of the season. Kirk Cousins, no good. Might want to try Kirk's nephews this week. They can't be much worse. Besides, his name should be Stevie Wonder, because when it comes to finding the end zone, Al, this Redskins quarterback is certifiably blind. 693 yards later, the guy has only gone for 1 touchdown versus, count them, 3 interceptions. You say it all the time, Al. You never put good money on a bad team. The Giants, they're improving every week. They've gotten the job done both times they've stepped on the field. I think that confidence goes a long way against a miserable excuse for a team like the Redskins. I won with Big Blue last week. I'm going to try to win with them again here. Let's go with the New York Giants minus the 4 and a hooker.
Listen, the Giants have been on an absolute roll in the series, as I said. 5-1 straight up and against the spread in the last 6 meetings. The home team won and covered both games a year ago. But what really impressed me with the Giants last week at home against New Orleans is the way the defense absolutely delivered. Held that Drew Brees offense to 288 yards. And we saw what Drew Brees and the Saints did the week before against the Oakland Raiders at home. True, granted, it was the Oakland Raiders and they were playing at home. But still, the Giants, after their first 2-0 start since 2009, they are certainly playing some inspired ball under new rookie head coach Ben McAdoo. And Eli Manning, 32 for 41, 300 and some yards against the Saints after the 3-touchdown performance against Dallas in the road opener. So they're off to that 2-0 start. Situation here, the line 4.5, absolutely. If you're going to play this game, whether it's 4.5, whether it's 4, you've absolutely got to buy down the half point for insurance. And Steve, that leads me to this week's gambling discussion, because we like to veer off from the games and talk about things from the perspective, especially mine as a gambler, yours as a guy who created the offshore sports book industry as we know it today. And it's about buying insurance and about buying a hook. And listen, it's something I realize it's for every member watching here in the audience, half will agree, half will disagree, and we'll never get them to switch sides. But to me, it's the thing that has turned more losses into pushes, more pushes into wins than any other factor, as far as I'm concerned, in 20 plus years as a gambler. And that's buying that half point when the line crosses 3, 4, 7, even sometimes 10. But there has to be limits when you do it.
Absolutely, and as a former bookmaker, I understand and come from the perspective that, listen, Al, if we're sitting at the blackjack table, right, and they offer you insurance, I'm going to tell you hands down, never take it. Matter of fact, if you're living in Florida and they offer you windstorm insurance on your house, I'm telling you, never take it. That's why people throw bowling balls through their window in a rainstorm, because they got to get back all the money they've been paying for insurance for the last 10 years. So insurance is never good. It's always tilted to the house. But here's the thing. There's 2 factors, and as a former bookmaker, I can still tell you that these factors are very important. And that number 1 is your bankroll. When your bankroll is up, you use the power of your bankroll to gain every possible advantage you can against a bookmaker today, because there is no tomorrow. And number 2 is, and by the way, we see on Steve Budin almost every single time there's a number 3, 4.5, 4. I'm always buying down or up for the advantage. And you're like, well, I thought you only do it with your bankroll. Well, look at the Steve Budin bankroll. And you look for over the last 7 years how I've maintained over 700, 800 times consistently, and there's a reason for that. So I bring that bankroll into every play that I make every day, and that's why I use the power of that bankroll against a bookmaker. And number 2, Al, something that we've actually never discussed on the show before, but it's the mentality. It's what happens when you're winning more games than you normally would. Does that make you sharper? Does that make you more confident? Does that give you the ability to pick better winners next and down the road? And for me as a bookmaker, I can tell you the answer is yes, because when a gambler is winning, he's more tuned in, he's more confident, and he's more likely to continue to win. When he loses, he doubts himself, he second guesses himself, even professionals, and it makes it that much harder to win. So if you can get yourself more wins by buying that half a point, it doesn't only help you in that game, but it carries over in your handicapping and your philosophy, in your mood, in your mentality, and it makes you a winner going forward.
Now, listen, if you're playing 7, 10, 12 games on a college football card or an NFL Sunday, it makes absolutely no sense. If you're like myself, like you, and you're finding that one game, you're isolating and you're pounding it hard, it makes absolute perfect sense, because the vig isn't going to kill you. And the fact is that it's only going to come into play when the half point comes into play. And the bottom line, I always tell people, if you're gambling in baseball, you have no qualms about laying $1.25, laying $1.30, laying $1.35 on a favorite on a Tuesday in the middle of July, then why wouldn't you have a problem buying that half point down on a single game, laying $1.25, laying $1.30, laying $1.35, when again, you're moving the odds in your favor. And again, it only comes into play when that half point comes into play. Nothing ventured, nothing gained otherwise. But again, this is like telling a Hillary supporter, hey, you should vote for Trump, or vice versa. You're never going to get the Democrat to switch sides to the Republican side of the ticket. And it's something that, you know, most people will sit here, they'll nod their heads or go, yeah, that makes sense. And they're never going to listen to us and take our advice. But again, from personal experience, my side of the fence, your side of the fence, it makes perfect economic sense. But again, to each their own. Hey, listen, next game, Green Bay and Detroit. Last year, Lions snapped a 24 4-game straight-up losing streak when they went into Lambeau and actually finally beat the Packers in Wisconsin. And then it took an amazing rally from a 17-0 deficit with a Hail Mary pass in the closing seconds for Aaron Rodgers to give the Packers a win in Detroit 3 weeks later, so the Lions didn't sweep the series. You've had the Packers here open up with a tough road schedule, going to Jacksonville in the heat and humidity in a barn burner game, beating the Jaguars, and going to Sunday night. Rodgers didn't play that well. Tough defense of Minnesota. Vikings are home opener. So they're 1-1, a lucky 1-1, I think. They're coming back home, taking on a Lions team that could have been 2-0, but they totally collapsed in the fourth quarter at home against Tennessee. All I do is I look at this game. I'm seeing an 8-point spread, and I'm going, I don't care if it's 8. I don't care if it's 9. I don't care if it's 10. There's no way I play this game, and I bet the Lions if I play it. Well, Al, I think the thing about this game is people tend to be habitual. Just trust me on this one. and old habits are hard to break, and you can trust me on that one too. Normally you see Aaron Rodgers and Matt Stafford and you say to yourself, no matter how high this total is, I'm betting over. But not this time. Not with these two teams now. Not anymore. I mean, now it's time to break that habit because both of these teams struggle to score. And let's be honest, this 48-point total isn't based on reality. It's based on a decade of public perception that only seems to remember Aaron Rodgers and Matty Stafford lighting teams up for 40-plus points a week. I mean, this total is more bloated than Buffalo Bill defensive coordinator Rob Ryan. It's beyond bloat. It's incoherent. I'm going to take the under here, under 48. Well, again, I don't like the game. I can see certainly your premise in betting the under in the contest. If you like the Packers, I can tell you that they're 7-1-1 against the spread in their last 9 home openers and 20-11-1. That's their role against the spread following a straight-up loss. And again, that Lions team totally collapsed at home against Tennessee. They're going to be without their top running back. This is just one of those games. To me, it's the who cares game of the week as far as I'm concerned. Not a game that I have any betting interest at all, but I can certainly make a case for your play on the under. Carolina, -6.5, 7 at home against Minnesota. This game takes on a totally different complexion because of the fact that Adrian Peterson is not going to play. But the fact is, Adrian Peterson was not contributing at all to the Vikings offense when he was playing in week 1 and before getting hurt in week number 2 against the Packers. Week number 2, it was the Sam Bradford show. You know, I said in one of my daily video reports the day after the Vikings beat the Packers, it's amazing. Sam Bradford was criticized as being Mr. Checkdown, the guy who wouldn't go deep, never took shots downfield, wouldn't extend the field by using the vertical game when he was with Philadelphia. Always played it safe. Right, always played it safe. Gee, what a difference it is when he has receivers that have speed on the outside and can go downfield. Gee, when you can throw the ball to guys that can catch the ball and actually get distance from their defensive secondary for the opponents, suddenly you're such a much better quarterback. So you're going to see Bradford take shots here against this Carolina defense that has shown me absolutely nothing in the first 2 weeks. But again, it's a big number here that you're looking for Carolina to cover at home. I mean, the question is, as good as Minnesota win versus Green Bay was, how effective can they be? Like you said, without AP, Adrian Peterson out with the ligament damage in his knee. My guess is this is going to be a problem for the Vikings out. Even if Peterson hasn't been running that well as of late, he makes the defense have to think run, and then they're susceptible for pass. I mean, their defense didn't play well. They did play well. They held Aaron Rodgers to limited point production, but this is Cam Newton and a Carolina team that's, well, back to their winning ways as of last week. And look, with AP out, I mean, Minnesota has no choice but to turn to their air attack. And I think that opens this game wide up. And we're going to see an over the posted total here. 43 points is going to come, and it's going to come quickly. I'm going to go over 43 and try to get the money. I can certainly agree with you there. Panthers last year averaged 31 points a game. We saw last week, although San Francisco certainly helped them, even though they had the 4 turnovers, Panthers 529 total yards. So they can move the ball up and down the field with Bradford throwing the ball. I think that certainly puts more time on the clock, affords you more scoring opportunities. I can see the over. This is also one of those games, like I said with Denver last week. If you're looking for a team to tease, this is one of those teams, because Carolina, you can, in a standard 2-team, 6-point teaser, take Carolina down to a half point, down to 1 point. They're not going to lose this game at home. And I know the Panthers are a great play at home against the spread. I know Minnesota under Mike Zimmer has covered 7 straight as a road dog. But I say, forget about playing this game from a point spread perspective. Either side, either play it in a teaser or, like you said, go ahead and play this one over the total, because points will be plenty in Carolina in this one. Tampa Bay, you had good Jameis Winston in week number 1, 4 touchdown passes, 1 interception when they upset the Falcons on the road. Then they go to Arizona. You had bad Jameis Winston, 4 interceptions and 1 touchdown pass when they got hammered 40-7 at Arizona. Now they come back home. They take on the LA Rams, who managed to beat the Seattle Seahawks because Seattle was pathetic offensively in the Rams home opener. And the Rams, of course, opened the season 2 Mondays ago, going to San Francisco, losing 28-0. Now you have Tampa, home opener. Tampa, a 4-point favorite. That's cheap, because Tampa's going to put points on the board. The Rams haven't showed me with Case Keenum and Todd Gurley that they can even sniff the end zone at this point.
You're absolutely right, but I think I'm going the other way. But either way, you had your I don't care game of the week. This is certainly mine. I'd hide the women and children. This one could be very ugly, Al, and I'm talking Lena Dunham ugly. In fact, it's safe to say that neither of these teams are going to make it to the playoffs, in my opinion. But Al, you know damn well that if you bet enough money on a game, it could be as exciting as the Super Bowl. Rams defense, they did stifle Russell Wilson last week, so I really don't see them having a problem with young Jameis Winston. When you beat Seattle, no matter how ugly it was, and it was ugly, you can't help but bring some confidence into the following week. So grasping for straws, and I'm grasping for straws here, I'm going to ride that confidence, I'm going to ride that momentum, and I'm going to go with the LA Rams here to get the money.
See, I think it's a matter of perception, though, because a lot of people will do just what you said, that they'll say, hey, they beat Seattle. And I'm saying to everyone out here watching the video, Seahawks aren't any good, especially offensively. Offensive line problems, Russell Wilson struggling with his mobility because of an ankle injury. They can't score, and they didn't last week against the Rams. And the Rams have an okay defense, but listen, the 49ers put 28 points on them in their road opener. And this is a Rams team, whether they played in LA, played in St. Louis, they're 2-7-1 against the spread in their last 10 road games. And this is a tough spot as well, because you've got a team from the Pacific Coast that is going to be kicking off 1 o'clock Eastern time. Their body clocks, their biorhythms, I don't care what you call it, they're starting basically 10 a.m. Eastern time start for them. I just think that Tampa has the offensive firepower. They rebounded in this spot. I think Tampa was in a very difficult spot. You know, they took care of Atlanta. They had to go to Arizona, and the Cardinals were pumped. The Cardinals knew, after everybody from their fans to their general manager said that they were dreadful against the Patriots, you knew they were going to kick their asses, and a kick ass is exactly what they delivered.
They hit a brick wall.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll take Tampa Bay big in this one. Then you've got Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Finally, the Eagles and Carson Wentz, who, hey, listen, I'm an Eagles fan. 2-0 start. They played the Browns. They played the Bears. They're going to play a little better defense. And the Eagles defense, which has certainly delivered after playing Jay Cutler and RG3, they're going to finally face a real NFL quarterback, a real NFL wide receiver in Antonio Brown. And I think this is a very interesting matchup. Now, as I always tell people, we don't discuss these games in advance, so I have no idea, but I'm curious to get your take before I tell you which way I'm going here.
Well, this is the Battle of Pennsylvania, which is your hood. But plain and simple, aside from being the poster boy for HGH, Ben Roethlisberger, he's on a mission, my friend. We both loved him last week, Al, and he won big. And I don't know about you, but when you look at a team like Philly, so young, so green, especially at quarterback, I got to tell you, it's in stark contrast to the veteran leadership that a guy like Big Ben brings to the table. One thing Philly has proven, though, is they can put points up on the board. They scored 24, they scored 29 in their first 2 games. We also know that Pittsburgh can put points up on the board. So while I'm leaning towards Pittsburgh here, I'm going to go with the over because neither defense is spectacular. So let's go all the way up over the posted total in the Battle of Pennsylvania.
Well, you got a Steelers team that averaged 26.3 points a game a year ago. Even though Roethlisberger was a turnover machine last season, 21 touchdown passes, 16 interceptions, and you saw his problems return against the Bengals last week when he had 2 interceptions to go with those 3 touchdowns. But again, they were playing in less than ideal conditions, a steady downpour, muddy field. But I think here, the Eagles defense under new defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, they're going to bring the pressure. Steelers offensive line is going to have problems again protecting Roethlisberger, but he can turn to give the ball to DeAngelo Williams, who has proven to be such a competent backup. Why Bell is out last year over 900 some yards. 2 great games to start this season. I think that Roethlisberger and Brown will pick on that suspect Philadelphia secondary, especially at the cornerback position. I think this is a great price. I like Pittsburgh in this game. This is another potential teaser situation, although not a big fan of taking a teaser with a team that's on the road in this spot. Could see the over, but again, this is one of those situations where, I always say you got to bet with your head and not with your heart, and these are 2 teams. I grew up, watching the Eagles, being a Steelers fan because the Eagles were so bad, like the Steelers. Just going to watch this one on TV, however. Last game on the board, your hometown favorite team, the Jets at Kansas City. I get so choked up talking about your Jets. Jets delivered last week in a must-win situation with the Bills. They have a couple extra days to prep for this one because it was a Thursday night game. Kansas City had its 11-game straight-up regular season winning streak snapped. I used Houston as my best bet last Sunday. Dominant defensive performance by the Texans. They really beat up Alex Smith in that game. 4 sacks, hit him 9 more times. I think about what the Jets did in week number 1 against Andy Dalton and the Bengals when they sacked him 7 times and just crucified him. If the Jets pass rush can bring the heat on Alex Smith, they could make it a long day for him in Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Al. This is my line mistake of the week. Let me explain something to the viewers at home that they may or may not know already. 3 points at home is the line maker's way of saying that aside from home field advantage, that these teams are perceived by the public to be completely equal. And while that may be true, I believe that public perception has gotten the best of the people this time because these Chiefs will improve off of what they did last week. 3 costly turnovers. They led to 3 scores. They get back Jamal Charles, who they've missed desperately. The Jets, on the other hand, lost to Cincy, a decent team, but clearly middle of the road. I mean, not anything special. And then they beat the Bills. Let me tell you something, Al. The Buffalo Bills are the worst team in the NFL. I'm going with Andy Reid to bounce back here. Give me KC here, minus the points.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here because I really don't have any skin in this game and I don't really have a feel for this particular game. Maybe the over, I could certainly go there and look at the over at 44 points. But Kansas City in week number 1, Phillip Rivers carved up this defense. And I'm not saying that Ryan Fitzpatrick is Phillip Rivers. I'm not even coming close to that discussion. But they also could not stop the Chargers' ground game at all. Found themselves down 24-3 in the 3rd quarter before having the rally in overtime. Aren't the Jets going to be able to move the ball in this Kansas City defense that has no pass rush?
They are, but if they continue to settle for field goals instead of punch the ball in, if they continue to have a loser's mentality and not go for the scores, I believe that they will be beat by Kansas City. And I guess what it comes down to at the end of the day, Al, is I don't have a lot of faith in the Jets as an organization. And maybe I'm bringing old wounds into a new situation, so be it. I just can't bring myself to bet on the Jets this week. Not yet.
Okay, I lean a little toward the over. Jets have gone over in 13 of their last 19. I will point out Kansas City only 3-6 against the spread their last 9 when laying points at home. That'll do it for this week's show. Guys, we are here each and every week breaking down your games from a point spread perspective here on the Football Insiders. For Steve Budin, I'm Al DeMarco, and we'll catch you next week on the Football Insiders.